Share it with every girl and boy. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas, everybody. Merry Christmas.
99.9 WEFM. WhatsApp us or call us at 457-9997. Activated Mornings on WEFM 99.9 is on now.
So time here in SVG, it is 8:44, and we are back with another segment of our Activated Mornings program. In studio, you have Dianna, Cain, and myself, Roleza Samuel, and in our virtual studio today, we have Dr. Gerald Thompson. All right, so we are going to... Doc, how are you, though? I didn't get to ask you properly, I think, in the last segment. Oh, hold on. Let's see what's... All right, let's try that again.
All right. Probably muted us. Okay.
Let me
say, as you know, I'm moving around a lot.
Yes, and not keeping still at all.
You could say that I am it, but I'm not going to talk about that. I am fine. I understand. I know you spoke about it earlier on. A great convention yesterday. And let me say, that program we just had there, I really appreciate it. And so the young, I don't know how old that officer Sean, Mr. Sean is, but to see young people really coming out and taking the lead on these things, I think it's very reassuring. And I wanted to ask him a question about the confidence that's been built in the police for the police, and I think he.
Doc, knock. Doc, you there?
Is the Wi-Fi?
All right, it's not stable. All right, so you come back. All right, so we're going to head on into another topic at this time, and this is stemming from an article. Well, all three papers. Remember, I still physically buy papers, but anyhow, all three papers had the same story. And so the topic that we're going to discuss now, prisoners are quote unquote asking for extended sentences. Should they be in fear of their lives upon release? All right. So I'm reading from the Searchlight newspaper first. So there is a story with regards to, so the headline is prisoner begs magistrate not to jail his neighbor who busts his head. Right, so two men fist bumped each other in court after one was spared a prison sentence when the other man, whose head he bust with a bottle, pleaded to the court on his behalf. Serrano Philip, 28, appeared before the Kingston Magistrates Court on the 18th of November, before Senior Magistrate Tamika McKenzie regarding an incident in 2021 where he unlawfully and maliciously wounded Sean Tannis of Lomans Bay. All right, so all of this stemmed from a situation between the girlfriend of, I think, Tannis, and they were arguing, and then one pulled a cutlass, and as I think one stepped out, the other one bust the other one head, right? So just to continue, so Philip struck Tannis in his head with a bottle, and the matter was reported to the police. After the facts were read, Philip told the court that the incident was caused by a little misunderstanding and that he was intoxicated. However, Tannis told the court that he does not want Philip to go to prison because all of we make a little mistake, and that he is also serving a prison sentence because he allowed alcohol to get the better of him. The same way that Philip was intoxicated during the incident. All right, he asked Philip, he said if Philip is sent to prison, that both of them would just be watching each other. All right, and he advised him to behave himself and don't drink no more tea, meaning rum. I never even knew that people called rum tea, but anyhow, I from that article.
The rum man.
Right. Okay, so coming down, Tannis, who's on 1 year sentence, will end in March 2025. told Philip that the way the country is going with regard to crime, even prisoners are asking for extended sentences. All right. So we're going to leave that part of it there. So they fist bumped each other, and the matter was well, no, he was fined $500 to be paid within a month, or he would spend a year in prison. All right. So what struck me when I read this was, okay, number one, the, I guess, quote unquote forgiveness element of them fist bumping, and one being in prison giving advice to the other that this is not where he needs to be, and he needs to behave himself, and he needs to control himself, right? Especially with the consumption of alcohol. But what struck me the most was the statement being made that even prisoners are asking for extended sentences, right? Interestingly, all the papers last week carried, and even on the front page of the Vincentian and on the middle page, one of the pages, maybe like the second page of the news, there were 3 murders that were there that took place. And all of them had a criminal history. And I think all 3 of them went to prison at one point. And I looked at that and I said, this is so interesting, because here you have this story of this individual saying that most of them are asking or saying that it's safer for them to stay in prison as opposed to being out. And then right there, you have a snapshot, or like a statistic within 1 week, that those who had committed crimes, they were actually the victims of being killed, of homicides, right? Mm-hmm. Now, with regard to that, the Vincentian actually followed up on that statement that was made by Tanis, and they interviewed the acting superintendent of prisons. So I'm reading this from the Vincentian. So he was interviewed, and he said, let me see. So when contacted on Tuesday, acting superintendent of prisons, Dwayne Bailey, made it clear that no prisoner has made any request to the prison authorities to have their sentences extended. Even if such a request was made, Bailey noted that prison authorities do not have the power to extend prison sentences passed by the court, and the state cannot keep a person in prison longer than the time ordered by the court, which of course does make sense, right? Further down in the article, he says that he does admit that it was brought to his attention that there has been some talk going around the prison to the effect that some prisoners are saying that it might be safer for them to stay in prison than to be released because of the rise in crime in the murder rates here in SVG. So I was having a conversation with a police officer on the weekend, and I was discussing the same thing. And I said, I'm curious to know, what is the percentage of persons who have been killed this year who have found themselves victim of crimes to be persons who actually were in prison before? And he said it's about 75% and more. Ooh. So it does beg me to question, do they actually have reasons to be concerned? Because we've seen that there are instances where some maybe just released from prison, some who were in prison at one point in time and have been released, have found themselves to be victims of crime. So is it something that they themselves should be fearful of? You know, when it says, I was having a conversation with the police officer, I was saying that, you know, when persons are sent to prison, they're sent to prison to be rehabilitated. Are they being given enough chance to be rehabilitated? But then he also counteracted and saying, are they also giving themselves enough chance to be rehabilitated? Because we see that some of them, when they come out, they go back and engage in criminal activity. You know, but to me, if that statistic is correct, as he mentioned, and if I'm looking at just what happened with last week in terms of those reports of incidents last week, 3 persons who had a criminal past and they were gunned down. So it is a question of, all right, so I'm going to say it is a question of concern, but I also do know that there are some schools of people with the opinion that, okay, so they have done a crime or they have committed a crime in the past, and some persons feel no empathy and no remorse when such persons are no longer here with us in the world. So, you know, it's just an interesting point that I noted coming out from all of that.
Lisa, no, I don't know. I think you have probably taken 2 streams and probably merged them, if I could say this. On one hand, there has been a thinking that everybody in the society is fearful of crime. I think that is true. And that because of this crime, the ordinary man is likely to say, well, I want to go to prison in an effort to avoid the crime outside. From the statements being made, one could get that particular impression. I'm really glad when the superintendent of the prison said they have not received any application from one individual making that statement. We are extending this for the possibility that there may be hundreds, maybe thousands of people who think it's safer in prison than outside, when clearly prison is a very dangerous place in itself. Now, I believe there is a subset of the society, the part of the gang-related warfare, where there's retaliation and individuals who committed a crime against somebody in another criminal entity, on coming out a year later, 2 years later, whatever the case might be, there is potentially a target on their particular back because of what they did and the other crime entities not forgetting what is there. So the general population, no doubt, is always going to be fearful of crime. I do not want to subscribe to any view that the general population would feel, boy, because of rising crime rate, it may be safer in prison than outside. No, I think that there may be people who are of severe criminal intent, who have committed not a bus head and so forth, people who shot other people, killed someone's brother, killed someone's uncle, killed someone's father, who may be fearful that someone from that family or that grouping will come back and attack them at some point in time later. That may be what is the thinking. And I think we may be merging the two situations of the general society with the small, isolated criminal groupings in one category altogether.
All right, so let me just be clear. I wasn't no way saying that us general persons, I'm hearing you. I wasn't no way saying that us general population want to go to prison because it's safer, you know. I'm not saying that. I'm saying persons who were in prison think that upon being released, as you just correctly said, that they may have a target on their back because they have this target on their back when they come out, that they are fearful that they would be finding themselves to become victims of crime. So which is why for them, it might be safer to stay in prison. Not talking about the general population. I don't see myself saying I'd rather go to jail.
I wanted to be clear about that, because even if you bust someone's head, or if you had I don't believe that necessarily is going to. I think it is the issue of murder, the issue of gang group entity related murder, that is the concern that we really have, today. Let me put it that way.
It's interesting to note in all of this that these once convicted criminals, when they are released, are saying they want to go back, or they prefer to go back because they think that they would be safer in there, which brings me to question, how nice jail is, how nice it is in the prison, because I don't think prison is intended to be somewhere that you would experience and say, yeah, I like that, like when you buy a food, someone you say, oh, their food tastes nice, I'm going back. I don't think prison is intended to be a place where people want to go back. So it's interesting that instead of saying, boy, I was there and I'm not going back, the criminals, some of them are thinking, it's safer, it's best I go back in there seems like it's nicer to me, maybe we need to step up
and make it more
exactly.
more
But
you can also understand why, because if I have to be looking over my shoulder all the time as of somebody who's outside, is it worth it? Is that quote unquote freedom? Am I actually free? Because I'm still going to be in a prison in a sense because of the fact that I'm constantly living in fear.
Those are the questions that they should think about before they commit their crime, or while they're in the act of committing their crime. To be very honest with you, if you commit a crime and you kill somebody and then you're going back out and you're afraid somebody is going to kill you, you deserve to have that fear. You shouldn't put yourself in that position. Sometimes what we are to do first, we do last. But that's a good thing for them to think about.
Doc, you're looking to come in?
Yes, I still want to segregate. I like science. One individual says in an unrelated thing, he's trying to prevent someone from going to jail, but says that there are some people who want it. And we're using that single individual as a to craft a statistic. What study? What information is really there that all this stuff is true? I have no doubt there may be an element of truth. One is too many.
I did read,
But
Doc.
I
I
think
did read, Doc, that the acting superintendent of prisons said he said in the last sentence, the acting prisons boss did admit that it was brought to his attention that there has been some talk going around that in the prison to the effect that some prisons are saying that it may be safer for them to stay in prison than to be released because of the rise in murder rate in SVG. In terms of the statistic, in terms of how many prisons are having this talk, is something different. Is what we probably need to question. But you cannot deny that the conversation is being had, the talk is being had.
No. I am. If you understand what I'm saying, I am saying a little part of what you're saying, a little part of what Dianna is saying, and we are merging things together. He said there's been no application whatsoever that he received to that extent, but
you can't
because they read it, they would have. Huh?
You can't apply for it. The sentence is passed by the court. The prison itself can't extend sentences. So unless they do something,
no. But of course they can't. Of course they can't. Of course they can. But they can't. They have not received any applications. Even they could extend it. They have not received any application. So on reading this, they went and inquired, and they say there's been some talk that maybe so. But I think that from the knowledge that I've checked, we may be talking specifically in relation to the murder situation. Not that prison is nicer, but that in relation to having killed someone's brother, someone's mother, whatever the case might be, you know, having been identified and being convicted, there could be the potential retaliation issues. We've been seeing a lot of retaliation issues. That's what's been fueling a lot of the murders and so forth. Retaliation, back and forth. One individual who was shot last year and people been trying to kill him 3 years ago. That's what we hear.
Right. So, Doc, so with that same point that you're making, do you think that they have a reason to be concerned upon release?
Of course, for those individuals in relation to murder, and I still go back, even though you said you have not made that particular statement, that the crime situation out there is so bad, and definitely you have not said the general population says it's better to be in prison than be outside. In terms of an individual who has committed wanton murder, right, as part of some gang related, we'll probably expect that the other gang entity will come back at them in due course. That's what is the issue of the day. You know what I mean?
All right. Well, I think in essence we're saying the same thing. I think
the same thing. We say the same thing. I'm trying to craft it. It's just say when Dianna says that, well, prison may be nicer, maybe something nicer about prison, or the individuals who's in a van listening and so forth is hearing that crime without digging deep into it.
Seriously,
and
prison is nice. That
separating this thing, they may get the wrong impression, and that's why I'm.
Doc, I don't know which person now this is doing.
Well, thank you very much, Dianna. I don't know if I don't believe it's either, but I think Dianna led a little with that in terms of suggesting that some people may think that way and so forth. But I could be wrong. Maybe that wasn't what Dianna intimated.
I don't think I did that.
All right. So this is the thing, right? We're at a point where I am wondering if they really do need to be concerned. But as Dianna did say, if you are going to be committing an act, part of it should cause you to stop and think before you even do whatever the act is, because there are going to be consequences, and there may be lifetime consequences that you're going to have to deal with. All right. So it's just that the statistics, it's interesting at this point, and we would just have to, well, I don't even want to say wait and see because that sounds so ominous by itself, but see what happens. Okay. So with that, we are going to close out on this segment. It is 9:03 and it's time for us to head into our ECCB currency exchange rates.